Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Christian Reeve Podcast. Today's guest is a digital marketing specialist and business owner all the way from Los Angeles, California. His name is Brandon Leibowitz. Welcome to the show. How you doing?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me on today.
Oh, it's a pleasure to have you on the show. I don't know if everyone necessarily knows this in my audience. Maybe some people do. I have an extensive background in marketing still to this day. So I've studied it, I've worked in it, I still work in it. So I always get excited being able to have a guest on the show who I can kind of converse with on marketing. So for some people listening to this show, it might be really interesting. For some people, maybe it won't be as interesting. I don't know, but I'm gonna have a good time. So anyway, thank you very much for appearing on the show. Let's just jump straight into the beginning of your journey in marketing. So you originally got into digital marketing back in 2007. So talk us through your journey from then to the present day, and just kind of give us like, I suppose, like an overview of how digital marketing has changed since then.
And I just kind of fell into the digital marketing scene when I graduated from college, got my degree in business marketing, and wasn't planning on doing digital marketing. But the first job I got out of school, they wanted me to help out with search engine optimization, which I don't really know much about that back in 2007. So they took me to classes and workshops and seminars and kind of let me learn alongside them about digital marketing, about running SEO, paid ads, social media, doing email marketing, and just realized back then in 2007 that everyone's probably gonna have a website in the future, and there's a lot of ways to get traffic. They all work, like I just mentioned, but SEO is just a way to get free traffic. So really focus more on the SEO side of things, but just trying to capture that traffic, working full time at different advertising agencies over the years while I was working on the side, trying to build up my business. And over the years, just built it up to where I was able to quit my job and focus solely on my digital marketing agency and really just helping people get more traffic to their websites nowadays.
And what would you say are the most important aspects of digital marketing?
Just knowing who your audience is and where they are. That's number one, is trying to figure out where are they going to be. Are they going to be searching on Google? Then let's focus on SEO or some paid ads. If they're going to be on social media, then you need to be on social. But just try to take a step back and put yourself in the user's point of view. If you're looking for your product or service, where would you go? That's number one, because a lot of people try to be everywhere, and you want to be as many places as possible, but you want to be where your audience is at. You don't need to be everywhere.
What's actually kept your interest in marketing? Because I mean, for me, it's always been the more creative side. And one thing that I always found interesting about marketing is it's got a lot of different, I don't know, like subdivisions, if you like. So you've got people that purely focus on analytics, people that purely focus on advertising, creative, search engine optimization. I mean, it used to be that that was like a kind of novelty thing, and now it's its own kind of thing in of itself. So what's kind of kept your interest with marketing in general? What's your focus?
I just like that it's constantly changing. So it's not just the same thing every single day. It's always something different. New sites emerge, or Google updates their algorithm, or like with social media, there's new platforms that are taking off or platforms that are dying off. So it's just trying to figure out what's going on in the world of digital marketing and just trying to stay up to date with all the different changes. So I really enjoy that part. Just it's not the same thing over and over again every single day.
Something that's always sort of interested me is the fact that every company I've ever worked with, and this is either on a like a full-time basis or freelance or whatever the case may be, every single company does their marketing differently. And I just find that fascinating because like you'll find people use similar tools, things like RFs, things like search engine tools for just tracking keywords or websites in general. Obviously, there's a bunch of different tools you can use to check the back end of websites and such. But it is kind of all up to you as far as like how you approach it. And to say there's a right and wrong way of doing it it's kind of like a half truth in a sense, isn't it? Because while it might work for one industry, it might not work for a completely different industry. And then no two businesses are ever the same anyway. So even if it works for one company, it's not necessarily going to work for the other. Um, so with your business, like how, because you're actually helping other, let's talk little bit about your business. So are you actually helping other companies, or are you actually just offering your services as a general marketing agency? Like talk a little bit about what your business does.
Well, we go in and make the changes, optimize our website, clean up the coding, do all that technical stuff to get Google to better understand what that website is about so they could get that free rankings, that free traffic from Google. So going in, optimizing all the technical areas, building backlinks, doing all the things Google wants a website to have to be able to get that SEO organic free rankings. So, but also try to help out with paid ads and other stuff like that, because once you get people to your website, half the people are probably going to leave, unfortunately, that bounce rate. So just trying to keep yourself top of mind, running some remarketing ads or doing whatever needs to be done just to have those multiple touch points, because I feel like it takes about 5 touch points to really build up trust from people, because getting Google to trust your website is tough to get them to rank you. But once you get those rankings, how do you get people to trust you? So trying to focus on that conversion rate optimization aspect of things, because again, getting traffic is just half the battle.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I remember one company I worked for. I was purely just responsible for the back end stuff. So I'd be looking at websites with using tools like very rudimentary tools like Alexa traffic rankings, and was that other? There was one tool that you use for domains where you could check like how powerful the domain is based on like how many links are coming into the website and coming out of it, etc. And I remember sometimes I get really excited about, oh, this one's got a high domain or something like that. And then you go and you investigate a little bit further. And this is just on a side note, something I really like about marketing from this perspective is kind of like the research element to it. You know, you look at these websites, you think, okay, maybe this is a website that we could link to. Maybe this is a website that we can use to, for example, write an article, post it on their website and get a link either in that article or link it back to that site, something like that. Because for those who don't know, linking, or we call it backlinking, into websites is a real way of like pushing the strength of your website up, or just trying to get people to come back through to your website. And sometimes you can kind of piggyback off better websites, essentially. So this is kind of what I'm alluding to here, is like when you're looking at, let's say you're looking for opportunities to just secure backlinks, you might just be looking like, okay, is this like a website I want to post on, or is this worth linking back to? And sometimes they'll have the higher domain, maybe it'll be like 50, 60, something like that. And that might not seem that high, but the ones that are like 90 or 95, 85, I mean, Google has like the highest, obviously. And then there will be like a bunch anywhere from between, let's say 75 to 85 that are like premium tier, but they're, you know, it's astronomical prices to try and get on those. So then you're kind of left with everything between, let's say 40, 45, all the way up to 70. That's kind of like the ones you'd be aiming for potentially, unless you're willing to spend more money. So with those, it can seem really convincing and you'd be like, oh, okay, this looks promising. And then you investigate further and you find that what they've actually done is they've bought a lot of links from like lots and lots of different places, but actually those links aren't very good. And they're to like lower, like maybe ones with like 20, like a 20 domain rating or something like that, like really, really low. And that the websites haven't really been optimized for Google or anything like that. They literally just exist to generate these links. I was wondering what you make of that whole process as far as like finding websites that are actually worth working with and, you know, securing these backlinks. Because as you mentioned earlier, Google is always doing things to, well, make it harder. You know what I mean? Like it's the whole perspective with, at least with SEO, is to please Google, write articles that will be good for Google and won't get you punished. But, you know, I mean, they're always tweaking that.
Yeah, it's always changing, but those are all third-party tools that you're mentioning. So Google has Google PageRank, which ranks scale or websites from 0 to 10, 10 being the highest, 0 is the lowest, the worst score. But Google, well, they used to show PageRank. They don't show PageRank anymore. So all these third-party tools start coming up with their own wannabe authoritativeness of like domain authority, page authority, from like Moz made their own. Then there's Alexa, then there's Majestic, Citation Flow, Trust Flow, Ahrefs, Domain Authority, Page. All these third-party tools are putting out numbers, but they're all just third-party tools. They're not Google PageRank, which is what matters. These third-party tools could be manipulated. Like you said earlier, there's ways to game the system, and you don't want to just look at one of the rankings. You want to look at all the rankings. So I want to look at Moz domain authority, page authority, Majestic trust flow, citation flow, Ahrefs domain authority, and all these ones. Because if I see all of them are good, that's a good sign. But if I just see one is really good and the rest are really low, that means they were probably manipulating it. So it's not really, I don't look at those numbers specifically when you're building backlinks, because Google's whole algorithm started based off backlinks, and backlinks are just clickable links from other websites to point to yours. So if you're reading an article on like Forbes and it says Brandon Leibowitz, and you click on it and it goes to my website, I'd be getting a backlink from Forbes. The more websites that link to me, the higher I'm going to rank. That's how it used to be. But then Google found out people were gaming the system and just building links to build links. So in the past, like if you had 100 backlinks and I had 200 backlinks, I would rank higher than you. But now it's not the number of backlinks, it's the number of quality backlinks. And what is a quality backlink to Google? Quality backlink just means a website that's related to you. So if you're, like you said, like you do digital marketing, if you get a backlink from, let's say, like a boating company, that might look a little strange to Google. Like, why is a boat company giving you a backlink? Maybe they're your client, so you help them out. But if the majority of your backlinks came from like boating websites, Google's going to think that you're related to boating. So what you need is websites that are related to business, marketing, advertising, entrepreneurship. It doesn't have to be exactly what you're doing. As long as it's somewhat related, that's what Google wants to see. The more related, the better. But I'm an SEO company. I'm never going to get another SEO company to link out to me because we're all direct competitors. But I could find other companies that do maybe like paid ads or do radio or TV advertisements. It doesn't have to be digital marketing, just be anything somewhat related. Again, those sites to link out to me, that's going to build up more trust from Google and then get me to rank higher. And then once Google sees that you have all these backlinks, then Google looks at the keywords on your website to figure out what to rank you for. But it doesn't work the other way around. If you build a website and you put keywords all over it, you make it load really quickly, you do all the things that Google looks for, but you don't have any backlinks, Google's not really going to rank you. They're not going to trust you. So you have to build backlinks. Backlinks are what I spend 80% of my day working on, building backlinks, trying to figure out how to build good quality backlinks, how to find these low quality ones and avoid them, because if you build the wrong type of backlinks, instead of ranking higher, you actually drop down in rankings, which is the last thing we want to happen. So with the backlinks, you got to be very careful. It's all about quality versus quantity. Everything else with SEO is a little bit more straightforward, but the backlinks are where you got to be very, very careful.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I've done a lot to actually make sure that my website is as high as it possibly can be through general just organic traffic and stuff like that. But the relevancy factor is so important, and I've seen what you just described actually happen in real time. Where and that's kind of what I was talking about before. Like you can buy a bunch of links, and that's great, and it might work for like a week or two, but then Google notices, and then they just tank your website, and then you're on like the 7th page of Google, and who's looking there apart from people like me that do it for research purposes? But generally speaking, no one's going. I mean, it's surprising if you go past the first page, second page, maybe past that. I mean, not many people are necessarily looking that far unless they're really looking for something. But anyway,
unless you find a SKU number, like if you need like a battery or like a specific SKU number or something like that, then people go to page 2, maybe page 3, but I doubt that. Most people never go past page 1. So if you're not on page 1, you're really missing out. Page 2 gets some traffic, but it's really more targeted where they're like, I need this really unique thing that I haven't been able to find anywhere else. But other than that, if they don't find what they're looking for on that first page of Google, they're probably going to do a new search on Google and just keep searching until they find something.
To sound like a strange question, but just ride with me for a second. Do you think that Google is fair with how restrictive they make things year on year with regards to marketing? Because I remember when I first started hearing about things like them coming down this, and bear in mind this is many years ago, but in the 2000s when people were doing keyword stuffing, and practices like that, like I understood that obviously you do have to kind of clamp down on it, because I mean it's not it's not producing good quality content that people can use. It's just like, oh, let's just throw all our stuff here and then we can get what we want. And in a way, that's kind of deceiving people, potentially. You can look at it like that. But then sometimes I look at some of the restrictions that Google puts in place and I'm like, is it really hurting anyone? Like, is this a problem? Like, for example, if you do want to pay for backlinks but the quality of the content's still good, then why does it matter where it links? Sometimes I look at things like that, like, I mean, don't get me wrong. If it's the links still need to link to things that are relevant to that specific article. That's true. But like, when they punish you for like linking to like a lower website or something like that, I just look at that like, that seems a little bit unfair. And for instance, one of the companies that I started working with recently, one of the first things that the guy said was, yeah, so we've had to make this change because Google has recently changed this thing, which means we have to just totally change our whole process. And like, I've heard so many people say that throughout the years. And, it's like you said at the beginning, like, it's always changing. Marketing is always changing for better or worse. And it's interesting, but at the same time, as marketeers, it just makes your life a lot more difficult a lot of the time. Like you have to adjust, and fine, that's part of life. But sometimes you just look at things like, is it really necessary for them to change this or this? Or like, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, they're just trying to clean up spam. That's the main thing. They're just trying to clean up spam. That's all they're really looking to do, and make more money off paid ads. I mean, that's really all they care about. But they're also just trying to clean up the spam because they don't want people gaming the system and manipulating it and finding ways to rank when they don't want you to just use tools like there are tools back in 2008 where you just click a link or click a button, hit start, and you'll build millions of backlinks and you'll rank instantly for all your keywords. Google's like, hold on. We don't want you just spamming people in forums and comment sections and all these other places, which used to work really well. But Google changed their algorithm and said, no, we want quality, not quantity. We don't want you just spamming people. So that's the main thing, is they're just trying to clean up all that spam. But also, they just care really about the paid ads. That's all they care about in the bottom line.
Good old days. No, I mean, that's fair enough, man. I agree with that. It's taken me literally, I'd say 5 years to actually push my website to the point where it's like firmly in place and it rarely moves past the first or second results page. But it's because of, having those legitimate links to websites that matter and, are relevant, and not just randomly putting it anywhere. And I tried to kind of I still put it in places that would make sense, but it just wasn't generating anything for me. Like, I mean, they call it organic links, but the best links are to have those organic ones that are just placed somewhere where they should be on a high ranking website, and you benefit from that, as we explained before. What would you, since we're sort of like talking around SEO, what would you say are the most important aspects of search engine optimization?
The backlinks are probably the biggest part of it. But
of course,
then once you have the backlinks, then Google's like, all right, what keywords do we want to rank you for? So then you got to optimize the website, putting keywords in all the different places on your website, the different technical areas like title tag and meta description and schema and alt tags for images and headers and all this technical stuff. But the easiest thing that anyone could just do is just go on their website and just add more content to every single page. So instead of having to do all that technical stuff I mentioned, you can just go and add more text to every single page. The more text you add, the easier it is for the search engines to read and understand what that page is about, because they can't really read images or videos yet. They're getting better, but they really rely heavily on text. So if you just add more text to every single page on your website, that's going to really help out a lot. That's a big part of SEO. That's easy to do. You don't have to know any coding or be tech savvy, but the backlinks are really number one. Backlinks and good quality content will get you the rankings, and everything else is important, but they're just so technical and minor, the impact that they have, versus the backlinks and the content, that those are things I'd focus on, because SEO is like a puzzle. There's a lot of pieces, but some pieces are a lot bigger, and the backlinks are a huge piece, and so is that content.
You still think that, I mean, obviously you said that good quality content is always going to come first, but when it comes to like evergreen content and content that's continually updated, so like, let's say you have a guide that, where you don't really change the content much, except that you tweak it a little bit year on year so that it's relevant for that year. Do you think content like that is still worth it and still something that's valuable, or do we need to sort of move past that?
No, that is definitely good content. You want to update your blog and have good quality content on your blog, and you might have a blog post from 10 years old that's still relevant. So you update it and make it relevant to 2022 versus 2012 or whatever year it was written in. But just got to make sure that you update it every once in a while, as long as it's evergreen. But more importantly is adding content to like the services that you offer or the products that you're selling. If you're an e-commerce website, the category pages need more content. The homepage needs more content. The services that you offer, if you're a service-based business, each one of those services should have a lot of text. The more content, the better. But you don't want to just go crazy. But about 400 words is like the average. But the more you do, the better, as long as it's good quality content and it makes sense. You don't need to write 2,000 words if you're just someone's solving a math question, like what's 2 plus 2. Maybe you just need a couple hundred words. But if it's something really technical, then you could get into it, like maybe like how to change your car engine out. That could be thousands of words. Where if it's something more basic, like how to tie a shoe, maybe you only need a couple hundred words. So just try to think of what's appropriate amount. And the way to find that is just searching in Google. Searching in Google for your keywords. See who's on that first page of Google. Open up all the websites on that first page of Google. Skip over the ads, but open up all the websites, the organic, the free listings, and see how much text each page has. Average it out, and that's how much text you should have on your page if you want to rank for that keyword. But you want to do a little bit more than everyone. So if everyone's writing about 400 words, you should write 500 words. If everyone's writing 4,000 words, maybe write 4,100 words.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I mean, that's what everyone's doing, isn't it? Trying to be better than the competitors, and often that means kind of replicating the content and then just adding something new to it, or just kind of presenting it in a more, well, something that's going to be more valuable to whoever's reading. But one thing that I've come across, which I don't know if you must have come across this, I find this really interesting, is like you'll find an article and it keeps repeating itself in order, I guess, to reach a certain word count, or so let's say that article only really needs to be 500-600 words, but they've managed to get it to 1,000 words, and they've done so by repeating themselves pretty much at the end of every section, doing like referring back to what they've already said, or sometimes just outright copying and pasting and just basically just trying to fill a word count. Like, what do you make of that? Do you think, like, with that, along with other potential problematic things that people do within marketing, like what would you say, what do you think of that, and what would you also consider to be kind of the worst things that people could do in day-to-day marketing?
Yeah, write for people. Don't just write for the search engines. Don't just write to put keywords in places. Like, just write for people, and eventually the keywords will be in there. But don't just use filler content either. Just write good quality content. We're not really trying to optimize for the search engines. I mean, you still want to do it, but you got to optimize more for people. Search engines could read through all that nowadays. They're pretty smart, so they could just see through. You just stick in keywords in there, just throw keywords in there. Just really write more for people, and the keywords will naturally emerge. And if not, then you're not writing the right content, because if you're writing about a keyword, you should be writing about that keyword, and it should be popping up in that text with synonyms, plurals, variations, restructuring the way it's written, or reordering the words so it's not always the same phrase, but just trying to keep it looking as natural, organic as possible, because that's the biggest thing, is just keep it natural.
One thing I've noticed that's different from client to client when it comes to keywords is what they actually deem as more important. So some I've seen will try and target for one specific keyword, or just a few related, maybe like 10 or 15 keywords that all are kind of related to each other, both short and long tail keywords. But then I see some that, they'll have like 70 to 100 keywords that they try and get in an article. What generally is your opinion on keywords, and what do you think is more effective, having less or more, and why?
Well, it just depends what your business is. If you're an e-commerce website and you have 50,000 products, you're going to need a lot of keywords. Whereas if you're an e-commerce website with one product, maybe you only have 20 keywords. So just trying to figure out what keywords you want to rank for that are relevant and that have buyer intent. You don't want to just rank for keywords to rank for them, but you want keywords that are related to your business. So some websites will have a lot of keywords. Some will have a few keywords because maybe they're in a really specific industry that not many people are searching for, or they're only searching a specific way. So just trying to figure out how people are searching and how to get you in front of the right person at the right time, at the right moment when they are actually searching on Google. But keywords, it just depends. Nowadays, you want to go after as many different variations, singulars, plurals, synonyms, industry jargon, misspellings. Well, not really misspellings, but reordering, restructuring the words, because the way people search is always different. I feel like I think Google said half the searches are new searches that they've never seen. So not every search is going to be a keyword that you think of, because with voice search, with mobile, people just speak into their phone. It's a whole different type of search. So it's not just optimizing for keywords per se, but it's optimizing for the keyword and all variations of it.
Yeah, I never even thought of that. I mean, of course, misspellings, and I'll get onto that in a second. I've of course encountered that, but I've never thought about the fact that, yeah, people do obviously search for their voice and they'll say the wrong thing or whatever, and then that has an impact on things. It's interesting. I actually came across this when I was writing an article the other day. In the keywords, there was a misspelling, but it was a high-ranking keyword, but I just couldn't put it in the article justifiably because it's a misspelling. So we just missed out on that. And then there was like an editor's note at the top that said like, "Oh, please be to the client, please be advised that, you know, this is spelt wrong, but this is just a Google suggestion for what you should search." But it's like you can't do anything about it. And I mean, I suppose you could if you want, but then it's just bad content then, isn't it? Because it's just quite clearly you're trying to rank for that keyword. But at the same time, people, you know, will often misspell things, or sometimes it's not even like a genuine mistake, like they've missed a letter or something. Sometimes it's actually like people think that a word is spelt a certain way when it's not, and then that's what they search, and then that's it. There's not really much you can do about that. I mean, I suppose maybe you could stick it in the meta description or something like that, but it's a bit cheeky. It's a tricky one.
Yeah, I wouldn't even do any of that stuff. Google now knows when someone misspells something, what they were looking for. So putting misspellings in is maybe
right. Yeah.
15 years old, which it used to work really well because Google wasn't able to pick up on the misspellings. I mean, I see websites that rank for keywords that don't even have the keywords anywhere on that website just because of the semantic web, the Hummingbird update that they did in 2013, where they understand the intent behind searches. They don't need keywords per se anymore. So keywords are still important, but they're not going to be that important in the future. I mean, they still are, but I mean, who knows what's going to happen. But I see websites that don't even have keywords on it that rank for keywords I'm searching for, just because Google knows the intent, search history, and singular or synonyms of those words that are related.
That's interesting. Do you know the inner workings or the mechanics behind search intent, like how that actually works and how websites can be sort of pushed into that lane, even though they're not necessarily directly related to it?
I'm not too sure. Putting keywords probably would be the best way. Sending those signals, building backlinks with the anchor tags with those keywords in it, with those search intent based keywords. But yeah, I think that would be the best way to do it.
Fair enough, man. It's intriguing actually when you think, because I always look at the future of marketing inevitably is going to be just like, well, me and you won't have a job, that's for sure, because it will just be like everything will be done by computers, I imagine, and you just need someone kind of casually monitoring that, I suppose. But I mean, you already see it. Like it kind of began with things like Amazon shopping and things being recommended to people. But yeah, even with Google, like I'll make mistakes or it will figure out what I'm searching for after like a couple of searches. You know what I mean? Like you search for one thing, it shows you the wrong results. You change the wording a little bit, it still doesn't get it. And then by the third attempt, it's pretty much figured it out. And it's not by coincidence. It knows what you're trying to go for. It's just trying to get the right words in there that will link back to what you're actually looking for. But
yeah, it's that machine learning, that AI. It's just learning by itself and learning every single day. And no one even knows how the algorithm works anymore. It's just growing by itself.
Crazy, man. Well, speaking of the future, and as of right now, what would you say are the key digital marketing trends that you've discovered in 2022?
Mobile. Everything keep shifting towards mobile, and you got to be on top of that. Got to get ready for the mobile. Also, video. Everything is really shifted towards video. If you look at all social media is really all the platforms have incorporated video. Like Pinterest allows you to put videos up. Everything is really heavily video. So having a good presence online with video content is going to be huge. Like YouTube, second biggest search engine. Got to have a presence on there, like doing the podcast. taking the audio, posting it on audio platforms, but taking the video and throwing it up on like YouTube, throw it up on Facebook video, throw it up on IGTV, long form video, throw it up on all the different platforms, LinkedIn video, all those places, because people want to see people. They don't want to read articles, read blog posts anymore. Attention spans are so short nowadays. So visual content works really well, but video, you're speaking to them, so they don't have to do anything. They could just sit there and listen, and it makes it the easiest, I think.
Absolutely. Speaking of which, a couple of years ago, I was working with a company. I very briefly touched on this, so I know very little about this, but I know that for websites like YouTube, there are certain tools, third-party tools available, things like vidIQ, which basically show you or give you suggestions as to what you should do as far as putting in keywords on the website and hashtags, things like that. But since that, as you said, I mean, YouTube is becoming like a search engine in of itself for video content. So what would you say would be like a kind of a good strategy for approaching those? Like, would you approach it the same way as general SEO, or is there a totally different strategy for approaching that?
Similar, not the same, but similar. Like with YouTube, I mean, you want to put keywords and the title of the video. You want to put keywords in the description, the tags. You want to transcribe the video because Google can't really read images or videos yet. So you can transcribe the video and put that in the description. It doesn't matter what platform you're on. It doesn't matter if it's YouTube or Vimeo, but all these platforms, they need you to like really, they'll try to transcribe it, but they're not there yet. So the more you give them, the easier it is for them to understand what that video is about. It's a long form like this, maybe time stamping different sections because it might be tough to transcribe it. The file name, making sure you upload the video with the file name that has keywords in it before you just upload it to YouTube, or same with like images on your website, making sure the file names have descriptive words that describe what that image is about. But those are kind of some of the things. There's a lot of other variables, like how long people watch your video. If it's a 5-minute video and people watch it for 5 seconds, bad experience, not a good sign. But if people watch it for 4 minutes and it's a 5-minute video, that looks good to Google or YouTube. And Google owns YouTube, so Google has their algorithm that's similar to YouTube. It's not the same, it's very different, but there's a lot of overlap with some of the things.
I always look at analytics, especially for my podcast, in a very unique light, because my analytics on certain websites are really good and others not so good. So like YouTube, I always look at like the average, because it gives you the average viewer duration for each video. And I mean, inevitably, it's not going to be very good, because who's going to sit and watch a YouTube video for like an hour, 2 hours? Some people will, but generally speaking, for a podcast, you're going to do that. You put it on in the background. Like, I've actually found more people listen to this show on platforms like Spotify, Apple Podcasts, etc. There are people still, listening to it on YouTube, and that figure is increasing. But when I look at that average viewer duration, it's generally like ranges between like 5 to 10 minutes or something, if you consider the average is about an hour and a half. So with regards to what you were saying before, that's really bad. It means people listen for 5-10 minutes, they're like, nah, and then they leave. Either that, or as I found out more recently, people return to it. They think, this is interesting, don't have the time right now, I'll come back to this later on. And I've actually had some feedback of people doing that. And I don't know, it's fascinating for me. And I'm also learning that, because podcasting itself is fascinating just from a marketing perspective, like how it works. Because certain websites, it might look like, okay, this is just how much reach the show has, and this is kind of like your ceiling or whatever. But like when I was looking at the RSS feed, the thing that you can have, like where your podcast is exported to other platforms, it's not hosted on there, but it's kind of distributed to those platforms. I was discovering like, oh wow, the show has like loads and loads of listens on this like random platform for distribution that I had no idea about. And it's kind of cheeky, but these websites like Listen Notes is one of them, shout out to them, they basically just like pull the RSS feed without asking you and just put it on their website. So you just find that your podcast is randomly on these websites. I mean, it's good, free advertising, but it's also like they didn't ask you, and you also have to email them in order to get stuff removed. Like I actually had to do this recently with regards to an old episode that I've since decided to remove because it doesn't sort of fit with my branding anymore, and other reasons as well. I was actually having to formally like email people and be like, yes, excuse me, please could you remove X and X episode? And I was thinking, this is crazy. Like, I never agreed for this to be here. Like, this, you know what I mean? If it was the host website, that's fine. You just delete it and it's gone. You don't worry about it. But these, as I said before, just it's ended up on these websites. And I'm just like, okay, great. But
not much you could do, unfortunately. People just make content and repost it and reshare it. And
well, that's a problem as well. Yeah, like I'm glad I've been able to remove that episode now, and you know, it's not like, let's say the show right now, you know, it has a small following. Shout out to the small following listening. Thank you so much. So it's not really a big issue. But if we were further down the line and, you know, we'd achieve some level of success, it would just be out there and there's nothing you can do about it. And that's problematic. And it's actually forced me to, and this sort of brings me on to branding now, rethink every single thing I post out there, which sounds obvious. I'm sure there's many people listening thinking, well, why wouldn't you do that anyway? Well, your branding obviously changes over time. So let's say when I first started this show, it was one thing, and now it's kind of evolved into something else. And if you look at the last, what we're on now, 169, I think this is. So like the first 40 or 50 shows, I was still figuring it out. And then after that, I kind of like, okay, this is what this show is. It's about either sharing life stories or it's about exploring topics at length. So today we're exploring digital marketing at length, and it's great. But when I go back to like those early episodes, doesn't really fit in with the branding of it. And it's like, that's fine because, you know, things change and grow over time. But with that being said, you know, when it comes to things like getting sponsors, people that are going to work with you in general, or even just people who want to agree to be on your show, if they know that, okay, this person was on your show before and they spoke about this, well, I don't want to be associated with that. And then it's like, you can't win. But at the same time, you have to think about that. And it's caused me to kind of review everything that I'm doing, not just on the podcast, but, you know, many other different platforms and so on. So what are your kind of thoughts on branding in general, and also like, how do you advise clients on that?
Yeah, branding is tricky, and just gotta make sure you're consistent with your voice, message, tone, what you're putting out there, and try to just keep it consistent across the board. Branding's not my area of expertise, but it is important. I just focus more on trying to get people that traffic so people can find them, and make sure that traffic converts into sales, leads, whatever that conversion goal is. But branding is definitely a tricky one where you gotta just really think about the whole brand and just figure out what colors, what tone, what voice you want to use, logo, all that stuff, and making sure that's consistent across the board on all the different platforms, making sure that everything is consistent. That's also kind of tricky. The logo and the tone and the description about who you are, all that stuff.
Okay, thanks for sharing. I appreciate that. So obviously you're focusing more on that as element of things, but have you sort of explored social media marketing at all? Could you share a little bit on that?
I help people get more followers on social media, so growing their account.
Okay.
And just building up a presence by just getting more real followers by being social on social media and engaging with their target audience to try to drive awareness through social. But social, you gotta think like, who is on social media? Like for myself, I'm an SEO company. No one's gonna go on Instagram or Facebook, or not many people are gonna go on Instagram looking for an SEO company. Most people are gonna go on Google, find me there, then put a face behind the company. Check me out on social media, which is really what social was created for, is putting a face behind the company, letting people know, all right, here's my website, but here's my social where you could check out reviews, you could engage with me, ask me questions, see status updates. It's that Web 2.0 where people can engage with you and ask you questions and not just be a static website. But social, it's good if you're like a musician or doing sports, news stuff works really well on social, but it's just like I said at the very beginning, you have to know who your audience is and where they are. Are they on social media? Then be on social. Are they on Google? Be on Google. If they're on Yelp, be on Yelp. If they're on TripAdvisor, be on TripAdvisor. But you have to know who your audience is and where they are, and how do you get in front of them at that right moment. But social does help out.
Yeah, that's such a solid point. I remember there was a company that I worked for maybe 3 or 4 years ago now, or might be even longer. Wow, time flies. About 4 years ago, and they were in just professional trading. And I remember getting really frustrated at the fact that we were using certain platforms to try and reach people. And I was saying continuously over and over again, like, our audience isn't there. They don't use these platforms. This is where you need to be. This is how we need to interact with them. And eventually we got there and we started talking to them and getting on those platforms. But even to this day, if you look up this website, they're still trying to use those old systems of reaching people. And it's like, it's fine, it's free, might as well use it and whatnot. But like, I always think that you should spend the majority of your time and certainly your money investing in the area where your audience is, because everything, like, I know it sounds really obvious, but like, you'd be surprised how many people and businesses just spend so much time and effort in areas that don't make sense. Like, okay, let's, for instance, discuss like TikTok as an example, right? TikTok is a great resource for reaching a lot of people really, really quickly, right? And sometimes it can work for companies. Like, I've seen it, let's say you have a shop, right? And you sell carpet samples, right? I've actually seen this happen. Like, certain companies have done this where they'll set up an account and they'll get a bit of attraction, they'll get a bit of intrigue because people think it's funny. There's that element to it. And they do, effectively use the app as it's intended. They jump on the trends, right? And they're successful to a degree. But what's the logic there from a marketing perspective? Okay, well, it will be to drive either traffic to the physical store if it's a physical location. So, if people see it in the local area, which it will likely be seen by those people because the videos will be pushed, the algorithm will push it to people in the local area. So that's effective. That's actually a useful thing to do. And of course, if it's an online business, fantastic. There's an opportunity to get, online sales. But sometimes there'll be companies that will try and go on there. I've actually seen marketing companies on there before, and I'm like, I see what you're trying to do, but there's no end game with this. There's no goal with this. Like, as you said earlier, people using those apps, people that are searching on like Instagram or whatever, they're not really looking for, help with SEO, marketing, whatever. If they want that, they'll look that up and they'll find an agency that works for them. And I think that's always what you have to look at is, with this business and what we're doing, can these tools that are getting a lot of traction actually help me, or is it better to focus my attention elsewhere? And I just wanted to just add to that because I thought that was a really, really solid point. And it's crazy because, I remember when I was studying business at like the lowest, like the earliest level at business school, they used to bang into our heads, the 4Ps: place, people, etc. And there's different variations on that, but they always would talk about like location and your customer base and everything being like the really, really most important aspects that you just have to keep in mind at all times. And if you do keep those in mind, generally speaking, you won't deviate a lot from that. You'll make mistakes because that's how we learn and that's just part of business. But if you always focus on those key aspects, those key things, generally speaking, you're not going to go wrong because you still got the key things in mind, and that will, of course, inform all your strategic decisions. In theory, at least. But yeah. Anyway, let's move it forward. You've already kind of given some examples, but just in general, what do you think the future of digital marketing looks like moving forward? Let's look at like the next 5 or 10 years.
Yeah, I think it's just if there's search engines, then SEO is still gonna be around. But if we're in the metaverse, who knows what's gonna happen with that stuff? But it's just trying to figure out what's gonna happen in the future. Unfortunately, no one really knows if Google's gonna still be around, if DuckDuckGo is gonna take over, or any of these other search engines that are emerging. But just trying to stay up to date with all these different changes and trends, and just trying to just constantly stay up to date with it all. That's the biggest thing, because unfortunately we can't really predict because there's so much change going on that it's always evolving and there is no constant, which makes it interesting, but just keeps you on your toes, or you like just keep on reading, keep on learning, watching videos, listening to podcasts, whatever it is, to reading books, but whatever it is to keep you up to date with everything. Otherwise you're going to fall behind and the competitors are going to see that advantage and take a hold of it. But just trying to stay up to date with all those different changes, especially with social. That's one that's constantly evolving and changing.
Thanks for sharing. I appreciate it. Got a couple of final questions for you, completely unrelated to marketing. So this is just questions that I always ask my guests, and I always get interesting answers. What's the best advice you've ever received?
Probably get a mentor for business. Has helped out a lot. Just get someone that knows and been there in your shoes. Well, maybe not same business, but they've been around and could help you out and give you a lot of feedback and let you know what's worked, what hasn't worked for them, and help you kind of hurdle through and skip over those things that you probably would have done on your own without having someone guide you and say, hey, maybe this isn't the best strategy. Let's try this one, or let's try this. And this is what I've done over the past that's worked for me and could potentially work for you.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. And what would you, I don't know, I asked this question a million times and I just suddenly changed it. What is the biggest life lesson you've learned so far?
Just to keep going, don't give up, just keep trying and never give up, whatever it may be. With like sports, like you're trying to do this trick or trying to land this shot or whatever it is, just keep working at it. Same like business or anything in life, just don't get discouraged. Like with SEO, what I focus on, it takes like about 6 months. So a lot of people will just kind of give up after a while and say, all right, this isn't working, but it's got to keep pushing it and working at it. And you'll see eventually it all comes to fruition and it'll work. Same with like trying anything in life. If you keep working at it and working at it, eventually you'll get it. It just, sometimes it takes longer, sometimes it takes shorter. I mean, we all want to go viral and just have that instant just gratification and just be everywhere, but it does take time for all this stuff. So just, that's the biggest thing. Just be patient with it all.
Excellent advice. And also I just want to tap into one thing you said there, which I think is really just bringing it back to marketing. I think it's an interesting point. This idea of virality and turning that into something. I think it's very dangerous when you get viral and then you're chasing the virality thing, because going viral is like a lot of the time really unpredictable. Like, okay, I had a viral video. I've had a few that have had like hundreds of thousands of views or whatever. Officially, apparently, if you get more than 1 million views, that's considered viral. Okay. So on that basis, I had a video that got to like, what was it, 2.9 million views on TikTok. And it was really random. It was a stitch. So for those who don't know, it's basically where you take one part of an existing video and you add something to it and you essentially create something new. And it was me reacting, doing something silly. And that got 2.9 million views. And also, interestingly, a lot of views in the Middle East. And even to this day, I'm still, because I find the analytics side of things fascinating. And I'm just sitting there like, why has that gone huge there? And what's the reason behind that? And just why? Like, yeah, I feel like a lot of marketing is that. And it's kind of fun, but also stressful sometimes, depends. But it's interesting. But point being, like, I think when it comes to going viral, the best thing you can do off the back of that is just try to kind of get people to pay attention to the things you're actually trying to push. Like, just sort of piggyback off that initially and be like, oh, hey, by the way, I do this thing, you know, or like immediately post into that. So, for example, one of the things I was doing when that happened was posting a lot of videos related to that were like responses to things that people had said in the comments. People were still viewing those videos because it was on that existing like thread and it was still related to that. And that lasted maybe like a month or whatever. And then it dies down and nobody cares anymore. But you keep going on and you keep moving forward and you keep trying to do stuff that is related to your brand, but also, you know, you're going with what the algorithm is suggesting and you're hopping onto it. So like, what I do with TikTok is I have like 3 accounts. One's specifically for the podcast, and that's all you see. It's just podcast clips. One is the account that went viral that I've now kind of changed into like a more formal platform that just advertises like, hey, I do podcasts and I'm pursuing acting and I do this and I do that. And, you know, it's like an advertising platform, I suppose. And then this other account that I have is purely just to kind of test the algorithm and basically say like, I wonder if this would work. Is literally just messing around. And I keep it, again, going back to the point about branding earlier, I keep it consistent in that I don't do anything that I think could affect my brand in a negative way. And I've had to kind of review that constantly as well, because, we're human, we make mistakes. But the point is, the whole time, it's like a learning exercise. And what I've learned a lot of the time is that in general, virality is just this kind of thing that connects with people randomly. It could either be something that's just really popular at that one time, like obviously Stranger Things was really popular for a little bit, and then people kind of made things in relation to that, and it kind of, people hop on whatever is in particularly popular in that moment, and they showcase their skills or their interest in that, or they do something funny or whatever, and they kind of latch onto that thing and create something out of it. But other times it's just purely random, and there's just no rhyme or reason to it, and you just have to kind of accept it and just move on. And I guess what I'm trying to say in a very long-winded way is, don't get bogged down with the virality thing, guys. Whatever you're creating, keep creating for whatever it is that you're trying to do, whatever product or service you're trying to sell. Stay on that lane. You can deviate out of it, absolutely. Try different things, but stay on that lane. Don't go too far from that path that you're trying to go with it. And if you do want to experiment, try what I did. Set up like a new account and just test things out, see what happens, and try and leverage it and push it back to what you're doing. So, for example, on that test account that I've got, I usually do like live streams on there, and I'll often talk about like, oh, hey, by the way, did you know I do a podcast? And when people are like, oh, okay, and you're like, yeah, this is where you can find it. Da, 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 da. Some people care, most people won't, because it's a short form platform, but some people will, and some of those people have actually come over and checked it out, and some of those people still listen. So thank you very much. There you go. Anyway,
yeah.
I just want to say a massive thank you for appearing on the show, Brandon. It's been an absolute pleasure picking your brains about digital marketing and just learning from you. Final question for you. Do you have any upcoming projects or some final thoughts that you'd like to share with our listeners?
I'm just working on the SEO still, just keeping pushing that and trying to get people that free traffic, and just be patient with it all. That's the main thing is with SEO and digital marketing, is just be patient. You're not going to get the instant results, the instant gratification. I mean, some people go viral, but most of the time it takes time, and just keep working at it. And over time, you'll see yourself growing and getting that traction, but just keep working at it. Don't get discouraged if you don't see those instant results.
Brilliant advice. Thank you so much. It's been a real pleasure. And to all the listeners of the Christian Reeve Podcast, as always, be safe, be well, and I'll see you in the next one.